Although there's hundreds of plants to choose from this spring, there's one that seems to rise above all the rest. They are the most popular backyard crop out there, and right now is when most of you start to plant them. Tomatoes. No garden is complete without them, and with hundreds of types, varieties, and flavor profiles to choose from, there's something for everyone. High germination rates, seedling vigor, fast growth, and a reliable growth trajectory are why the stores and seed houses push tomatoes so much. But seedlings and those starts is the easy part. In fact, many of us simply do it ourselves. The real challenge with tomatoes is planting them the right way and getting that bounty in the end in the amounts that we deserve. And it all starts at this stage right here. So today, I've got 8 tomato planting tips to help you get the most out of the crop this season. 8 things that we have to do to ensure that it's our best tomato year yet. Tomatoes are easy no matter how you slice them. And right off the bat, let's just say that you can grow them from direct seeding. But almost no one ever does. Instead, tomatoes are normally grown from pre-started plugs or seedlings to save time, space, money, guaranteed germination, extend that growing season, and of course, to get that head start. The positives of planting tomatoes from starts far outweighs those of any from direct seeding by 100-fold, more so than any other crop. So today, we're going to focus on the things that are important and help that particular method of growing tomatoes. And the first of those things is timing. While tomatoes are a vigorous and strong crop, they are still tropical. They most certainly have a minimum threshold temperature that they need to survive and a slightly higher one that they need to thrive. Below 50 degrees Fahrenheit for extended periods of time, and you run the risk of your tomatoes perishing. 70s and 80s are needed for fruit and flower development, so we normally plant tomatoes in the spring. You know, when the temperatures are warming up. In areas with a true winter, that means waiting at least a few weeks after your last spring frost date to plant, sometimes even a month. This is why pre-sprouting them and getting that head start is so important. If you start to see the stores in your area carrying tomato plants, generally it's safe to plant them, but do watch those forecasts. You'll also notice that every spring stores, at least the good ones anyways, carry numerous varieties of tomatoes to choose from, which is great. But seeds open up those choices 100-fold. It's important to choose the right tomatoes not only for the space you have, but also for what you want to eat later on. Don't grow cherry tomatoes if you're after the big slicers for burgers and sandwiches. Similarly, don't grow a watery, juicy heirloom if it's paste tomatoes that you need. Truly, there's something for everyone, so be thoughtful on what variety you pick to plant. Tomatoes come in 2 types, determinate or bush type and indeterminate or vine type. Now, these only categorize and describe the growth pattern, and you can get all shapes and sizes in each type. It's really up to you to find that perfect fit. Once you know what to plant and when to do it, our next decision is where. And for tomatoes, this part is super easy. For location, as long as the area that you intend to plant in is not standing in water, the only parameter that tomatoes care about is light. Tomatoes of all varieties are indeed a full sun plant, and they require 16 plus hours a day of full direct sunlight. I can't stress this enough, but shady spots need not apply. Exposure and wind are rarely an issue, so just pick the sunniest spot in the garden and you're good to go. Okay, we got our plants and we got our spot. Let's talk about how much space tomatoes truly need. As a general rule, Tomatoes need about 2 feet between each other as well as other plants in the garden. I know it looks like a lot of space now, but tomatoes grow to immense sizes, both above as well as below the ground. Container and small bed setups as well. Micro varieties can grow in 5 gallons or sometimes even less, but for most adult plants, 7 to 10 gallons is the better choice. Exceptions can be made for certain vine tomatoes that are grown straight up, as well as those micro varieties that we just mentioned, where 18 inches seems to be enough. However, no tomato ever complained about having too much room. So, go with 2 feet and you'll never have an issue. All right, with the space worked out between our tomatoes, it's time to talk about the planting depth. Tomatoes are a unique plant in that they love to be planted deep. This is because they have the ability to send roots out of their stems virtually anywhere, seemingly at will. These appendages, known as adventitious roots, allow the tomato plants to expand their root networks virtually overnight. More roots means more water and nutrient uptake, which means you'll get much faster growth out of your tomatoes. Taking off the bottom 2 to 3 sets of leaves and planting your tomatoes 1/3 the way up the stem takes advantage of this regardless of the variety. You don't have to do this to be successful with this crop, but just like with the Head Start plugs and seedlings, little things can have big cumulative effects on the harvest later on. Speaking of those roots though, anytime we're taking a plant from one environment to another and not just replanting it, but also disturbing those roots and the soil around it, we have to take care. Rapid moisture loss and the roots hitting the drier surrounding soil can be one of the biggest contributors to transplant shock and the young tomato plants stunting their growth right after planting. To mitigate and prevent this from happening, simply soak the hole before you plant your tomato. Our second to last tip for successful tomato planting builds on this, and that's to soak the surrounding area to give the young plants the best environment to thrive in. However, before we can do that, we have to do our 8th and final tip. And that's to mulch. A nice thick mulch layer is going to lock in that moisture, even out those nighttime low temperatures, and prevent the rising heat of spring and summer from cooking the soil, or worse, your tomato plants. It also stops unnecessary soil erosion and topsoil damage. Have a look at what simple overhead watering can do to a freshly planted tomato, as well as the soil around it. Complete destruction. Get that mulch layer on, it's totally worth it. You can use grass clippings, leaves, or my personal favorite, clean fine straw. Lay it on thick, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. Mulching is always important, but especially with new plantings. And I know you guys want to get to your own tomatoes and get them in the ground, so we should probably recap this video. But before we do that, I got a couple of bonus tips for you. Now, I find that whenever I'm transplanting new plants, I always have the most success when I go easy on them. Make sure to always soak that ground like we talked about earlier, but also do your plants a favor and plant them on a cool, calm day. If the heat of the season is already on and that's not possible, then plant in the morning when the temperatures are more tolerable. Also, make sure to harden off those homegrown tomato seedlings even if it's already warm out. Store-bought ones are usually good to go either way, but wind and exposure can absolutely decimate young lush seedlings, so if you're raising your own, make sure that they're hardened off first before you make that jump to the outside. And speaking of, let's go ahead and jump into that recap now. Tomatoes will always be the most popular plant in the backyard, simply because the first part of their life cycle is almost always flawless. But as we can see from this video, it's the back end that actually produces the goods. Hopefully these 8 tips plus the bonus ones made some sense and set you up for tomato success later on this summer. As always, guys, happy growing, and I'll see you in the next one.